Hey, Cookies here. This is the Dragonflight Season 1 Mythic Plus guide for Restoration Druid. And just to preface this video, you should always make sure you go and double check online resources. The ones that I'm going to list is going to be subcreation.net, which is an awesome resource that just keeps up-to-date information on what people are running in keys and raids and all that kind of stuff. So you can check things like trinkets, talents, gear, enchants, all that stuff, and it's all up to date because it's people actively running keys, and the information gets updated as people continue running keys. So this is like the first stop that I usually make to kind of just check in on things. And then the other resource is going to be Questionably Epic. This is a great site that is written by a very good Druid player. I think they also make some Mistweaver articles in here, and they just talk very in-depth about the class and things, and they update talents and builds, and they talk about trinkets and all this kind of stuff. So definitely check these two resources out to stay up to date, because YouTube videos do have a tendency to become outdated rather quickly, but the intention of my guide is just to get you started, get you out there, and then you can use these resources later on to then help guide you along your way as the season progresses. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into our talents. The way I'm going to break these talents down is, instead of talking about the entire tree, which I do plan to do in another video, I'm going to talk about various builds you can run and all this kind of stuff and different options you can take to help everybody find something that they like. For now, we're just going to kind of follow a cookie cutter build, and I'm also just going to explain the key choices that you're making in each talent tree, and I'm not going to explain all the other stuff in between. So the goal here is you're just going to focus on getting these key talents, and then other than that, you can go through the tree yourself if you want, or you can take my import string down below in the comments and just throw it in there, or you can go through and actually choose stuff that you want on the way to get these key talents. And the key talents for the restoration specific tree is going to be Flourish, Convoke the Elements, or Convoke the Spirits, Adaptive Swarm, and Dream State. And then for the class tree, the important talents are going to be Nature's Vigil, Protector of the Pack, and Moonkin Form. So just to give you a quick idea of why we take these key talents, they are all very versatile talents. They all help us either increase our damage or healing, and instead of just doing one or the other, they pretty much all do both. We can use, with Dream State talented, we can use Tranquility to increase our damage in theory, because it reduces all of our cooldowns. So we can use something like Convoke the Spirits, we can use Flourish with Nature's Vigil, and all of these can be used to do damage, because we can press Nature's Vigil and then press Flourish, and now our Nature's Vigil is doing more damage because of Flourish. So we're almost using Flourish as a damage cooldown. So that's why we take all these talents in Mythic Plus, because they're nice and versatile. They can still be used for healing, but they also now have the opportunity to become a lot of good damage spells. All right, so next we're going to talk about our stats. So item level is the most important. Get as much item level as you can, then take haste, and then pretty much take any other secondary stat. To break the secondaries down, you're going to have Mastery, which is going to be your best healing stat, but it's not going to provide any kind of damage boost. Then you have Critical Strike, which is going to be a bigger damage boost than a healing boost, but it's going to still give you a little bit of both. And then Versatility is going to be a very good damage boost, an okay healing boost, but it's also going to give you survivability. So it's going to help yourself live through other things that would normally kill you if you're taking a lot of damage and stuff like that. And then for trinkets, because there's no real up-to-date information yet on trinkets, I don't want to be misleading. So use Subcreation, use Questionably Epic, like I mentioned before, and just come check the trinket list. Or if you want information on the trinkets beforehand, I do have a trinket video coming out before Dragonflight actually releases. It'll probably be like on the day of release, and you can check that video to kind of learn about what trinkets will probably be the best to pick up right away. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and talk about our healing rotation. I'm going to head over to the training dummies first, but basically the healing rotation, I'm going to break this down kind of like the beginner's guides, but they're just going to be a little bit more explanation to things. But for the most part, the beginner guide actually covers these extremely well. So for our healing rotation, it's going to be our upkeep spells. This is going to be the most important thing that we need to keep track of. So this is keeping Efflorescence down on the ground, usually wherever the tank is, and then keeping Life Bloom on the tank, and then keeping Cenarian Ward on cooldown. That's going to be the 3 most important things that we do. Keep Efflorescence down on the group, keep Life Bloom on someone, keep Cenarian Ward on someone, or on cooldown. Next, after we do those, we're going to then start pressing Rejuvenation on people. So after we've kept our upkeep spells down, we then press Rejuvenation for when people need more healing. And then when people need even more healing after we rejuvenate them, we then use things like Swift Mend and Wild Growth. So Swift Mend for single target healing, Wild Growth for group healing. And then lastly, if there's still people who need more healing after these things, we then start pressing Regrowth, and only then. A lot of people that play Resto Druid tend to press Regrowth really early on in the rotation. You don't want to do this because the more HOTS you can get out on people because of our mastery, the more healing Regrowth will do, and the more efficient it'll be to cast. So again, upkeep spells, keep Efflorescence down, keep Life Bloom on someone, keep Cenarian Ward on cooldown, then start pressing Rejuvenation on people. Then when people still need more healing after that, you press Swift Mend if you need single target healing, and you press Wild Growth if you need AoE healing. And then lastly, if people still need healing after you've done all that, you then start pressing Regrowth or even spamming Regrowth. So that's the healing rotation. Next up, we're going to talk about the damage rotation. So we have upkeep spells. First one's going to be Adaptive Swarm. And while this is in the damage rotation, it actually does a lot of healing. So this is going to be something that you're going to want to press pretty often. So keep Adaptive Swarm on cooldown. And it doesn't really... There is a specific kind of targeting thing you can do to like min-max it as much as possible. I'll briefly explain it, but for the most part, just focus on keeping it on cooldown. Just throw it on an enemy, throw it on an ally. It doesn't really matter. But if you want to min-max it, there is a resource, I think, or an article on Questionably Epic that talks about it more in depth, just in case I get something wrong. But for the most part, it's basically keep Adaptive Swarm on people who don't already have it, and then it's also best used on people with either 1 or 2 stacks of Adaptive Swarm. So keep track of how many stacks people have, because when you throw it on somebody, they get like 3 stacks, I think. And then like generally it's better to put it on allies than it is enemies most of the time, just because then when it leaves your ally and goes to the enemies, it has a chance to split, and then you affect multiple enemies rather than just one. But otherwise, just use it on cooldown, and then focus on using it on people with 1, 2, or 0 stacks of the buff. So that's Adaptive Swarm. Then the rest of our upkeep spells is going to be Sunfire and Moonfire. So we're going to want to keep those on everything. Then we have Protector of the Pack, which is our talent that we'll end up taking. This is just the pre-patch talent tree, that's why I don't currently have it. So what it does is it basically stores healing that you do, and then consumes that stored healing as damage every time you press Moonfire. So if you have my weak aura pack, or just find a weak aura that tracks how much of Protector of the Pack you have, like the healing stored, that way you can make sure you're using Moonfire before it fills up all the way, or before, it's like over capping essentially. So you're going to want to press Moonfire just to get that constantly in use. And then Star Surge is something you can press as well. Now you don't have to be in Moonkin form to press it. So it is a very useful spell to use. So it's just an instant cast, does a lot of single target damage. So you can kind of put that in priority after your upkeep spells. So again, we have upkeep spells, we have Adaptive Swarm, Sunfire, Moonfire. Then we're keeping track of our Protector of the Pack and pressing Moonfire more if we need to, even if targets already have it, because it makes the initial damage do extra damage. And then we use Star Surge, and then lastly we can go into cat form and use things like Rake, Thrash, and Rip. And that's pretty much it for the damage rotation. And now we're going to talk about a few things with the spell usage. So the first thing I kind of already mentioned in the talent section, but we'll go a little bit more into it. So we have very versatile cooldowns now in Dragonflight as a Resto Druid, so we can use a lot of our cooldowns to do damage or healing or both. we can kind of choose how they get used. So for instance, with the Nature's Vigil and Flourish combo, I would recommend almost just macroing these together because they have the exact same cooldown. And then all you're going to do is you just put some hots out on the group, and then you just press Flourish and Nature's Vigil, and now it's just going to do, you can just see it doing damage to things, and then the more you heal, the more it does damage. You don't have to like necessarily focus on it, just think about just pressing Flourish and Nature's Vigil together because they just will help increase, the Flourish will help increase Nature's Vigil damage by quite a bit. So that's the first combo, is using Nature's Vigil and Flourish together. And then the next thing you want to make sure you're doing if you're trying to do damage is using your Convoke the Spirits in Moonkin form. So if you use Convoke the Spirits in Moonkin form, sorry I don't have all my abilities on my bar. There it is. So if we use Convoke, oh, I just canceled it. If we use Convoke the Spirits in Moonkin form, it'll prioritize Moonkin form abilities, letting us cast things like Starfall, which we don't have access to, and lots of Star Surges. So make sure that you are, every time you want to do damage with your Convoke, go into Moonkin form first. And then also, you can also try to line it up. You don't always have to, but try to line it up with Flourish and Nature's Vigil. So you Flourish, Nature's Vigil, and then go into Moonkin form and Convoke. And you're going to because when you're in Moonkin form, you'll still Convoke and cast like a lot of healing spells, which will then help the Nature's Vigil do extra damage. And then other than that, we have Tranquility with Dream State. So that's this talent here, which reduces all of our cooldowns whenever we press Tranquility. So guess what? We get to turn Tranquility into kind of like a pseudo damage cooldown. So let's say you just used Flourish, Nature's Vigil. Now you're going into Moonkin form and you're going to use up this Convoke. So now I'm going to Convoke. And then I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing else I can do. I can do like a little bit of damage, but let's use our Tranquility. So now we use Tranquility and look at it reduce all the cooldowns of Flourish, Nature's Vigil, and Convoke, and now we get those spells that much faster and can do more damage. So you can turn literally every healing cooldown into a damage cooldown now, if you feel like you don't need them for healing. So be aware that you may need them for healing sometimes, so don't be too greedy with it, but the general idea is you should just try to keep everything on cooldown as much as possible and just keep rolling. And if Flourish and Nature's Vigil come up and you don't need to do healing, you just use them for damage. If Tranquility comes up and you don't need it for healing in the next 3 minutes, just use it for damage. And that, I think, pretty much covers everything. The only other thing I guess I'll talk about is Soul of the Forest. So this is a talent where every time you Swiftmend, it's going to buff your next healing spell, which is Regrowth, Rejuvenation, or Wild Growth. Generally, to use this spell, you should just always try to combine it with Wild Growth if you're trying to do group healing, and Regrowth if you're trying to do single target healing. Don't use it with Rejuvenation really ever. So again, the way it works is when you press Swiftmend, you're going to get this buff right here, Soul of the Forest, and it just empowers, think of it as just empowering your next Regrowth or Wild Growth. So after every Swiftmend, Wild Growth if you need AoE healing, Regrowth if you need single target healing. All right, I think that covers everything. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm going to have more in-depth guides and walkthroughs and gameplay and all that kind of stuff. So this isn't the end of the teaching for Resto Druid stuff, but I hope it was helpful. I hope you're having fun in Dragonflight. See you in the next one.